My name is Oduor, and I have a lot of passion for telling stories. I tell stories through poems. I tell stories through my blog. I tell stories through playwriting. I tell stories through novel writing. I started writing a long time ago, perhaps high school, perhaps before that. I used to write a lot of poetry. When it came that time to go to college, I decided that I want to go and learn more about communication. And so in college, I studied mass communication and journalism. And of course, when studying mass communication and journalism, you learn a lot of things about writing. You learn a lot of things about ethics. You learn a lot of things about dealing with other people and telling the stories that other people have not heard, or crystallizing the stories that people have heard and then giving them something, that is easy to understand and to read. Wherever I am, I always think about stories. I look at someone and suddenly I want to tell the story of what that person is thinking to other people that are not there. So that is how I do it. And to be very honest, I love telling stories. The book that is coming out now is called The Ghost of 1894. And many people have been asking me why ghosts and why 1894 and why not 1994. Well, when I was young, I used to listen a lot to BBC when I was herding my grandfather's cattle by River Nyando. So I used to hear this story about the war in Rwanda. And I really did not understand why people were killing themselves so much. In our village, if somebody was killed, it would be a big thing. Or if somebody had an accident, it would be a very big thing. And you could see a lot of emotions. You could sense the loss. But now I was listening to BBC and they were talking about hundreds of people being killed. But I kept wondering, why would people go to that extent of killing so many of their own? And I also realized that these guys were so tight. In fact, they were speaking the same language. So after my college, I decided that I want to go to Rwanda and look at the people of Rwanda and hear the stories that come out of Rwanda. And so with very little money and with nowhere to stay in Rwanda, I decided to travel. In the year 2006, I reached Rwanda and I started talking to the people of Rwanda. I started talking to the people that had escaped the genocide, the people whose families were killed during the genocide, the people that knew the story of the genocide, the journalists. I also met a soldier that was one of the guys that were coming into Rwanda from DRC Congo to join the forces of the current president. I talked to guys that whose relatives were killed in churches. I went to the places where these guys were buried. I visited a family whose entire family was killed. I visited someone whose entire family had been killed. And I waited for April, the day of the month of the genocide mourning in Rwanda. But a lot of people had written about 1994. A lot of people had written about the genocide. But what I was very interested in was to write about a story based on the genocide, but also look at pre-genocide. What was really happening before genocide? I started digging into the history of Rwanda. I started digging into the problem, why there was a lot of tension between the Hutu and the Tutsi. And I went all the way back to 1959 when there was the first Hutu revolution. I went even further to when these guys were colonized by the Germans. That is in the 18th century, when they were taken over by the Belgians, and what the Belgians did by giving preferential treatment to one of the tribes. And so then the book is based really on the book is plotted within 1994, but it traces back the story of 1994 to the 18th century, all the way to Berlin during the World War I, all the way to Germany, invading Belgium, and Belgium getting pissed off when they were big deal in DRC Congo, and they crossed over and took over Rwanda. The chapter I like most is chapter 17. Chapter 17 is called Ruins. It's a chapter that has both sides of the coin. It talks about when Rwanda is completely in ruins. It talks about the story of Habineza before the genocide, when Rwanda was beautiful, when Rwanda was lush, when everybody called themselves Banyarwanda. They went to the farms as one people. They went and danced during the village ceremonies as one people. And I write a story where they are seated in the sand and reminiscing over their lives before they started having their differences. And it is painfully sweet. It's beautiful. Each and every time I went over that chapter and read it again, I felt some hope. But even when you feel the hope, there's that deep pain of loss. The hardest part of writing this book was actually writing the book. The characters, I sympathize with my characters, even as I took them through hell. And I thought to myself at some point, do I really need to tell this story? And for what reason am I telling this story? Does this story add any value to humanity? The story of Rwanda has been told for a long time. But one question that I kept asking myself is this: how about the people who are 20 years old now? Has the story of Rwanda been told to them? And I realized, no, the story of Rwanda died some 10, 15 years ago. So people do not actually know. There are lots of people who are growing up now. For example, the people in Kenya, the young people in Kenya that were involved in the 2007 post-election violence, they do not know the pain that comes with losing families. So I struggled with those questions, whether it was important to tell the story of Rwanda. And there were a lot of voices that were telling me, a lot of people that were telling me, forget about this story, don't just tell the story. This story has been told several times. But how has the story been told? And that, I think, really matters. I think I dig deeper into some of the issues that affected Rwanda during that time. In 1839, Prussia had signed the Treaty of London, agreeing that Belgium was a neutral country. At home, he had smoked another packet of cigarettes and drank an entire bottle of scotch. The next day at 9 a.m., the official rushed to the ministry and had a meeting with the Germans. The exchange was fierce. He reminded Germany of their obligations under the Treaty of London, but he was told categorically that the emperor and his government had come to the painful conclusion that passing through Belgium was a matter of life and death. As I already told you, my friend, my emperor sympathizes immensely with your situation. We acknowledge the treaty we signed, but this is war, and you stand between my emperor and his most vicious enemy, the German official said. The French have assured us that they will respect our neutrality. Those filthy French are cunning animals. They will treat the treaty as a scrap of paper. And if the treaty is a scrap of paper, why should we treat it with respect? I wish there was another way. How about the frontier, he asked. We are not fools. We have no plan to waste our soldiers at the frontier with the Russians while the Russians mobilize against the emperor. August 1914, Brussels, Belgium. What shall we do? The king asked. Will the Bretons save us from the Germans? Maybe, maybe not. The superior Germans marched into Belgium with vengeance. They destroyed the country with the premeditated assault. They executed civilians throughout eastern and central Belgium. They burned villages, ravaged cities, set civilians on fire. Even libraries were soaked in gasoline and torched. If it was true that war between the French and the Germans had caught Belgium between a hammer and an anvil, it was a gross understatement.